This whole sadhana took barely half an hour, and yet it is of the utmost importance to us that it was a sadhana, a striving towards light, and not an effortless awakening. For a guru normally guides his disciples along the path that he himself has trod. As Sri Bhagavan completed within half an hour not merely the sadhana of a lifetime, but for most sadhakas of many lifetimes, does not alter the fact that it was a striving by self-inquiry such as he later enjoined on his followers. He warned them that the consummation towards which it leads is not normally attained quickly, but only after long striving. But he also said that it is the one infallible means, the only direct one, to realize the unconditioned, absolute being that you really are. He said that it immediately sets up the process of transmutation, even though it may be long before this is completed. But as he said, the moment the ego self tries to know itself, it begins to partake less and less of the body in which it is immersed, and more of the consciousness of self. It is also significant that, although knowing nothing of the theory or practice of sadhana, Sri Bhagavan did in fact use pranayama, or breath control, as an aid to concentration. So also he did admit of it as a legitimate help towards attaining thought control, although he discouraged its use except for that purpose and never actually enjoined it, saying, breath control, pranayama, is also a help. It is one of the various methods that are intended to help us attain one-pointedness. Breath control can also help to control the wandering mind and attain this one-pointedness, and therefore it can be used. But one should not stop there. After obtaining control of the mind through pranayama breathing exercises, one should not rest content with any experience that may accrue therefrom, but should harness the controlled mind to the question, who am I? Till the mind merges in the self. This changed mode of consciousness naturally produced a change in Venkataraman's sense of values and habits of life. Things that had formerly been valued lost all attraction. Conventional aims in life became unreal. What had been ignored exercised a strong compulsion. The adaptation of life to this new state of awareness cannot have been easy in one who was still a schoolboy and who lacked all theoretical training in spiritual life. He spoke to no one about it, and for the time being remained in the family and continued to go to school. In fact, he made as little outer change as possible. Nevertheless, it was inevitable that his family should notice his changed behavior and resent some features of it. This the Maharshi has also described. The consequences of this new awareness were soon noticed in my life. In the first place, I lost what little interest I had in my outer relationship with friends and relatives, and went through my studies mechanically. I would hold an open book in front of me to satisfy my relatives that I was reading, when in reality my attention was far away from any such superficial matter. In my dealings with people, I became meek and submissive. Formerly, if I was given more work than other boys, I might have complained, and if any boy annoyed me, I would retaliate. None of them would dare make fun of me or take liberties with me. Now all that was changed. Whatever work was given, whatever teasing or annoyance there was, I would put up with it quietly. The former ego that resented and retaliated had disappeared. I stopped going out with friends to play games and preferred solitude. I would often sit alone, especially in a posture suitable for meditation, and become absorbed in the self, the spirit, the force or divine current which constituted who I really am. I would continue in this despite the jeers of my elder brother, who would sarcastically call me sage or yogi and advise me to retire into the jungle like the ancient rishis. Another change was that I no longer had any likes or dislikes with regard to food. Whatever was given to me, tasty or insipid, good or bad, I would swallow with like indifference. One of the features of my new state was my changed attitude to the Meenakshi temple. Formerly, I used to go there very occasionally with friends to look at the images and put the sacred ash and vermilion on my brow, and would return home almost unmoved. But after the Great Awakening, I went there almost every evening. I used to go alone and stand motionless for a long time before an image of Shiva or Meenakshi or Nataraja and the 63 saints. And as I stood there, waves of emotion overwhelmed me. The soul had given up its hold on the body when it renounced the I am the body idea, and it was seeking some fresh anchorage. Hence the frequent visits to the temple and the outpouring of the soul in tears. This was God's play, Lila, with the soul. I would stand before Ishvara, the controller of the universe and of the destinies of all, the omniscient and omnipresent, and sometimes pray for the descent of His grace upon me, so that my devotion might increase and become perpetual like that of the 63 saints. More often, I would not pray at all, but silently allow the deep within to flow on and into the deep beyond. The tears that marked this overflow of the soul did not betoken any particular pleasure or pain. I was not a pessimist. I knew nothing of life and had not learned that it was full of sorrow. I was not actuated by any desire to avoid rebirth or seek liberation, or even to obtain dispassion or salvation. I had read no books except the Parapuranam, a little bit of the Bible. My conception of Ishvara, God, the personal God, was similar to that found in the Puranas. I had never heard of Brahman, the impersonal reality or absolute consciousness, nor of samsara, the succession of births and deaths that is called bondage and terminated only by the liberation called self-realization. I did not yet know that there was an essence or impersonal real underlying everything, and that Ishvara or God and I were both identical with it. Later, at Tiruvannamalai, as I listened to the Ribhu Gita and other sacred books, I learnt all this and found that the books were analyzing and naming what I had felt intuitively without analysis or name. In the language of the books, I should describe the state I was in after the awakening as Suddha Manas, or Vijnana, the intuition of the illumined, or complete knowledge. It was quite different from the state of the mystic who is transported into ecstasy for a brief, unaccountable while, after which the gloomy walls of the mind close round him again. Sri Bhagavan was already in constant, unbroken awareness of the self, and he has said explicitly that there was no more sadhana, no more spiritual effort after this. There was no more striving towards abidance in the self, because the ego, whose opposition it is that causes strife, had been dissolved, and there was none left with whom to strive. Further progress towards continuous, fully conscious identity with the self, established in full normal outer life and radiating grace upon those who approached him, was henceforth natural and effortless. And yet, there was such progress is indicated by Sri Bhagavan saying that the soul was still seeking a fresh anchorage. Things such as emulation of the saints and concern as to what his elders would think still show a remnant of practical acceptance of duality, which was later to disappear. There was also a physical sign of the continuing process. A constant burning sensation was felt in the body from the time of the Great Awakening until the moment when he entered the inner shrine of the temple at Tiruvannamalai.